Hey, I am Sage Rountree, author of many books, including this book, Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses, Volume 2. It is its birthday today, and I am really excited to talk to you about this book. My co-author, Alexandra DeSiato, is on her way. She'll come squealing in a little bit, and you'll get to know her some too. If you don't already know the first edition of the book, sorry, I made the mistake that I am here to correct myself. If you don't already know the first volume of the book, it's called Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses. It came out in 2019, I think. It was Alexandra's wonderful idea to write this book for you as yoga teachers so that you can weave inspiration into your classes, because we all know that that theming is the secret sauce that really elevates your yoga class, that takes it beyond being just a workout class to a work-in class, to something that really helps students find interconnection and meaning, and that keeps them coming back to your class in particular. So this book came out in 2019. It was a big bestseller. We're really excited. Actually, also came out in a bunch of different languages. So if you would rather read it in Spanish, you can do that here. If you would rather read it in French, voila. And if you are a reader or speaker of Mandarin Chinese, that is an option for you as well. So this was the original. It has 54 themes for you. Now, Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses Volume 2 is not a second edition. That's why I had to correct myself from making that mistake. It is an all-new second volume of this book that is here with 54 fresh themes for you on all new topics. And it has an evolved theming template. If you already know the first book and have read the first book, then you are familiar with this theming template we give you that gives you prompts for how you could structure your yoga class theme. Because a good theme is something that you plan ahead of time. It's not something that you show up to class with and just wing it and make things up as you go along. In fact, a good theme isn't something that came to you the night before as you were sitting down to plan your class. A good theme for your yoga class is something that you have thought through for a long time, more than 24 hours, something that you have processed, that you have lived, that you have digested, and something that you are then ready to share with your students. Just like a good yoga lesson plan, a good yoga theming plan is something that you really can embody and speak about with some kind of authority. Don't let this scare you to make you feel like you've got to be like the preeminent philosophical expert on yoga philosophy or yogic texts or really any kind of philosophy or poetry. If you have learned lessons that have helped you in your life, then you are qualified to add a theme to your yoga class. And this book is here to help you. In this, we have the evolved theming template that has some new prompts for you. So the first thing that we changed as we evolved the theming template is to have you make your theme both really personal and also really universal. The personal part of your theme is having lived and processed it and sharing enough about your theme and your own experience with it that your students can relate to you, so that it doesn't feel like some airy-fairy pie-in-the-sky goal or concept. It's to your students in their. So it's taking yoga beyond the highfalutin realm, taking it into lived experience, both on the mat and also off the mat. So we ask you to connect it to the personal without oversharing, without being hyper vulnerable, without overdoing it. And then also to make this relate to a universal experience, to something that all of your students will have time to see themselves in. And to that end, it's useful, once you have introduced this concept, to give some quiet in your class, to give some time so that your students can process and think about how this idea that you have presented to them will play out in their own lives. Hello.
Hello.
Whoa, there's your mic. And here's your block.
Hi, everyone. Sage, thanks so much for getting us.
That's all right. I'm talking about how the evolved theming template is asking folks to make their theme both personal and also universal.
Yeah.
And I was about to come to my whole spiel about how your yoga class is a conversation. The problem is that your students get to hear both sides of the conversation, and you only get to hear one side, the side that is you talking and the side that is stuff you have said over and over and over again in every class.
Well, sometimes it is two sides. It's you talking and then your self-criticism talking back to you. At least that's the case for me sometimes. Like I'm sharing a theme, and then in my best moments that self-critical voice is not there, but in my worst moments, it's like, is that landing? Is that making sense? So sometimes it's one-sided, and sometimes it's two-sided, but not in a good way. So
It's so true.
yeah.
And our students, if you're doing your job well and guiding your students to interconnection, they are giving you this face. It's giving boredom. It's giving hatred.
That's also why it's so tempting, I think, sometimes to be jokey in yoga, like make little silly jokes, get people to smile and laugh. And there's definitely a place for that. I think in the book, there's a lot of humor and silliness in moments. But I think as a teacher too, sometimes you can rely on that because you want approval from your students, so you get too jokey and too silly because you want to see them smile, but that's not in their best interest. That's not best for their internal experience. I don't want to be laughing at jokes the whole time I'm trying to go in and breathe and be present. So
yeah. So that's one way that this book is a companion and not a second edition, but an all new companion. At the top of the broadcast, I said, "Oh, here's the new edition." I was like, "No, it's not an edition.
Not an edition.
It's a volume."
I think, one of the things you and I have talked about, I'm going to grab our first volume. They're so beautiful. I love these covers.
They look so pretty together.
Yeah, they're just gorgeous. I love it. But one of the things we both talked about was concern that people would see this and think it was just a second edition. And it's really not. It's all new material. It's completely, as Sage pointed out, it's a fresh take, both from the template perspective, but also fresh 54 themes. So we're really diving into all new territory in this book. And we've really refined our ideas on theming. Did you talk about lanyards?
Yeah. Not yet. Why don't you introduce that?
Well, that's your baby. I feel like you should talk about that, and I'll jump in.
All right. So for folks of a certain age who came up watching the Food Network on cable television, you might remember Emeril Lagasse. He was like the Cajun chef, and he would say "bam," and he would put a bunch of flavor in, "bam," and he would use this term lanyap, which is like a Cajun Creole word that means send a little something extra coming out from the kitchen. It could be an amuse-bouche, but a lagniappe is bigger than an amuse-bouche because it isn't necessarily just a little appetizer. You could have a lagniappe would be an extra side coming out from the kitchen, or a second dessert coming out from the kitchen.
A little gift.
Yeah, a little glass of cordial at the end of your meal, a little gift. And what we suggest in this new second volume is that you add a lagniappe to your class and give your students a takeaway. This serves a number of purposes, from the hyper-practical to the way more like philosophical. Hyper-practically, it shows your students that you cared about them and that you put some effort into class, and it gives them some kind of physical token or reminder that keeps them coming back to your class. So this is good for student retention. And then all the way at the philosophical end of the realm, we've actually gone full circle because it is bringing them back to the sense that you thought about them before class started. So not only is that really good from a classroom management perspective and a pedagogical perspective, but philosophically, it shows your students that you care and that you want to connect with them.
And this is, I feel like, some of us teach yoga full-time, some of us teach yoga part-time. So I don't think this concept of a lanyap, of a little gift has to be in like extra heavy work or a lot of effort. I feel like if you bring your students a pebble the day you're talking about groundedness, then that is like a beautiful little gift that they can bring to themselves, and they can put on their dresser, or they can throw in their car cup holder for a few weeks, just to remind themselves of what it means to be grounded. So it doesn't have to be something that is like a huge extra step in your planning, or a huge or an expense, anything like that. We do suggest some really fun lagniappes in our book. Like we talk a little bit about, I think, like bringing heart candies at Valentine's Day, or when you're thinking around like love and this sort of obvious themes. But a lot of what we talk about and advocate for in terms of a little gift, it's sort of like simple, silly things. A little piece of paper with the word that you're theming on it. Our favorite example, I think, of course, is when you're theming on the particular example we use is when you're theming on something related to like finding your inner goddess, you could bring in nail polish and put a little pink dot on everybody's pinky toe so they can walk out into the world remembering that they can channel that inner goddess, you know?
I love it. So it's a low lift way to
Mhm.
enhance your class retention and also show your students your care, because yoga means connection. And this is one little way that you can connect with your students.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our favorite themes in these books.
Oh man.
In this book in particular, this new one.
What's your favorite theme?
Well, let me just page through. I like the ones you wrote.
I usually like the ones that you write. And I think that's the joy of writing together is that I read something you write and I think like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah. You know, I also like the ones that are just my go-to back pockets. But I also like the ones that we had to really stretch to write. Like we have a whole section called Rebel Yogi that is addressing this was like, I remember some of the latter themes that we wound up writing because it's like, how are we going to get to these? Like, how am I going to write about equality for all, or love is love, or Black Lives Matter, which are all such important concepts. So these kind of are some of my favorites. And I do like this one, You Are Not a Product. It's like the anti-capitalist take on spiritual materialism, physical materialism. And it's a gorgeous one. Just like in the first volume of this book, we have beautiful art by Lasha Mutual, who is an illustrator based in Canada, and she made us all new little ditties for the end of the chapters here.
So cute.
So You Are Not a Product. What was your favorite?
You know, I like some of the ones that we delved into that have Sanskrit that are related to the Yoga Sutras. Pratipaksha Bhavanam comes to mind, and I think that we talked about that in. Let me see if I can find that one. We call it the ancient art of cognitive reappraisal, and it's really this idea of cognitive reappraisal is a more modern day way of thinking about Pratipaksha Bhavana, which is when you are having a mindset about something, can you imagine the complete opposite to be true? Can you cultivate this other way of thinking, really? And that's such a helpful theme to consider because so often we have a view on something. We're telling ourselves, you know, you're telling yourself a story about something that happened, and this idea of cognitive reappraisal is just an invitation to think about it a different way. As Sage pointed out, most of our pages have these like beautiful images. This one doesn't have one because
we wrote a lot.
We wrote a lot. We were fitting it on the page, but you'll see the same lovely little grid, little chart that we used in the first book, where you're given sentences or phrases to employ in certain parts of your class. So opening, during movements, during pauses, and during closing, that still exists here. But some of the things that we've changed, we've added not just a place for you to put in songs, but also quotes, mantras, poems, anything that connects, anything that could really show up in your class and enhance what you're teaching.
And the grid is a reminder that a well-themed yoga class doesn't just introduce the concept at the beginning and then drop it like a lead balloon. It picks it up over and over again, turns it, investigates it from different angles. So you talk about it at the beginning, sure, and you talk about it at the end. You've got to bring it home, right? But you also talk about it throughout the class, both during movement and during stillness.
The word weave or weaver shows up a lot when people are talking about yoga theming. And I think that's because that's what we're doing. We're not just dropping that idea, but we are weaving it through the experience of movement and breath. And really, I think when you are theming well, it shows up before class has started. It shows up in the clothes that you choose to wear to class that day. It shows up in the music that you're playing. It shows up in the lighting that you put on in class, right? If I'm theming on something more upbeat, more positive, more, energy building, I'm going to wear bright colors and turn the light a little brighter. If I'm theming on something that maybe like a little bit, I want people to have space around it. I want them to, go into themselves a bit more and have an internal experience, I might wear darker colors. I might drop the light a little lower. My playlist might be a little bit moodier. So I think good theming is not just what you say. It's not just what you give. It's not just your sequence. It's everything tied together. And we talk about those things in here.
Yeah. Well, this book is available wherever you want to get your books. You can buy it at the links that you can find on my website, but you can also order it from your favorite independent bookstore, or better yet, order it from your library.
Mhm.
Because when your library orders a copy, they get this copy, the hard copy, they also get the ebook. And that means that more people can be reading it at the same time. It also means that once you have returned your library loan, you can then share the wealth with other readers
Mhm.
down the line. So as much as we like to take your money, we also would love for you to use your tax dollars and your local library to order this book so that more people can benefit from it. Once you love it, please give us a sweet review.
That is the biggest thing. You know, I always hate asking for that. I always feel a little bit like, oh, can you please like review us? But it's the thing that matters most. And if you think about yourself as a book buyer, even if you don't buy from those big box stores, you probably look at reviews there. You probably take a look at Goodreads or Amazon and just sort of see what people are saying about a book. So if this speaks to you, if you enjoy it, if you find something new and helpful and, you know, beautiful about it, please share with others so they can find their way to the book as well. And if you know folks who enjoyed the first book, I know that this guy, Sage, has some other copies over here. I see.
do. I brought all my foreign.
Well, let's share those.
I already did.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah. So it's been translated into, you know, into lots of different languages, this first book. And I feel so humbled by that. I feel so, you know, impressed by that our words and our thoughts and our view on theming has gone around the globe. So if you're one of those people that really enjoyed the first book, please check out the second. Please recommend the second to other folks that you know who really enjoyed the first book, because really, I think we're offering what you loved about the first one. We've just kind of turned up the dial into you know, added more, made it better, new and
amped it
improved.
up.
Yeah.
More of the good stuff.
Yeah.
If you want more of the good stuff to hear me and Alexandra talking about this book, she was on my podcast, Yoga Teacher Confidential. You can find it here on my YouTube channel. It was maybe episode 19 or so. So you can come and find that. Also, she's going to join me in my virtual studio focused on teacher development. It's called Comfort Zone Yoga. It's at comfortzoneyoga.com. She'll join me there on Thursday at 2 p.m. for a longer chat where we will answer your questions. So if you are watching this video, either live or via recording, and think you want to hear more, ask us some questions, come on over, join comfortzoneyoga.com, and you will be able to join us live on Thursday or watch the replay. And if you're only discovering this after, inside Comfort Zone Yoga, there's a whole space that's a free community for yoga teachers where we would be happy to answer your questions asynchronously.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of ways to reach us, lots of ways to hear us chat about this book. If you're familiar with Sage's podcast, I'm part of the cover art for that.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Which is such a great cover. It's such a great podcast cover. As we're talking about this book, one of the other things I was going to share, I don't know how much you've shared about the contents, but I love, you know, we talk about, we have these new fresh themes, but the general overview of them is that we talk a little bit about the Yoga Sutras in this. We cover some other yogic thought. We theme on the word namaste, for instance. We cover themes that are both simple and profound. We look at alignment lessons, both for asana and life. Rise to joy, themes of happiness. We cover some Hindu mythology and stories, but we also really draw upon the ancient wisdom of Shiva and Shakti and the goddess and you know, the goddess in the masculine form. So we talk a bit about that. And then there's rebel yogi themes that you were talking about earlier. And then we've got some lessons learned from our students, which is it's a beautiful chapter because we both have learned so much in our collective million years of teaching or whatever we have.
That's right. And we will learn from you when you give us those sweet reviews, when you come to Comfort Zone Yoga and ask questions. This can be a conversation that we can both hear both sides of. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to connecting with you. Bye.
Bye.
Boom.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I was
I'm
like
so
sitting here.
sorry.